They say the most dangerous things in life don't happen suddenly. They creep in, little by little, until one day you look around and realize you're in too deep. I never saw it coming. My name is Jennifer Shaw, and this is my confession. At first, it was just a feeling, subtle but persistent. A pair of eyes lingering too long, the way silence stretched between us when we were alone. It wasn't anything I could point to, nothing I could call out without sounding paranoid. But I knew something wasn't right. It started after I married Eric. I wasn't just gaining a husband, I was stepping into a ready-made family. His son, Ryan, was quiet, well-mannered, and, at first glance, entirely unremarkable. 17, reserved, the kind of teenager who kept to himself. I wanted us to be close. I tried. But Ryan wasn't interested. No hostility, no open defiance, just distance. And I told myself that was fine. Step-parents aren't always welcomed with open arms. Then, little things started happening. My favorite sweater went missing, only to reappear in the laundry, freshly washed but stretched out. A faint scent of my perfume clung to it, though I hadn't worn it in weeks. Then, the door to our bedroom, one I always kept locked, was slightly ajar one evening when I came home late. Nothing was missing, but the air inside felt different. I told Eric, of course. He laughed, said I was imagining things. It's an old house, he said. Doors shift, things get misplaced. Stop scaring yourself. So I let it go. Until the night I woke up and found Ryan standing in our hallway. It was past midnight. The house was still, heavy with sleep. I wasn't sure what had woken me, maybe a creak in the floorboards, maybe just some sixth sense of being watched. When I opened my eyes, he was there. Not moving. Just standing. Our eyes met in the dim glow of the nightlight, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then, just as calmly as he had appeared, Ryan turned and walked away, disappearing into his room without a word. I wanted to believe he had a reason. Sleepwalking, maybe. A nightmare. But deep down, I knew better. After that, things escalated. A text popped up on my phone late one night. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. Do you ever think about me? My stomach tightened. I stared at the screen, my fingers frozen above the keyboard. Before I could respond, another message came through. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. A chill ran down my spine. I had my answer before I even looked at the sender's number. Ryan. It should have ended there. I should have told Eric, should have shut it down immediately. Instead, I hesitated. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the way Eric barely noticed me anymore, too busy with work and obligations. Maybe it was just the wrong moment, the wrong loneliness, at the worst possible time. I don't know why I didn't block him. But I do know that I read every single message he sent. And I never told him to stop. I told myself it was harmless. Just a phase. Just a boy with a misplaced crush. But deep down, I knew better. The texts kept coming. Some were innocent, compliments, little observations about me that I hadn't realized he noticed. Others were bolder. Too bold. I think about you all the time. You don't belong with him. If he really loved you, he'd pay attention. I told myself I wouldn't respond. That ignoring him was the best way to make it stop. But then, one night, he sent something different. A photo. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The angle was low, the lighting dim, but as my eyes adjusted, my breath hitched. It was me. Asleep. My chest rising and falling beneath the blankets, my hair spilling over my pillow. Taken from inside my bedroom. I dropped the phone like it burned me. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. This wasn't a crush. This was obsession. And it was right inside my house. I needed to tell Eric. I should have woken him up right then and there. Should have marched into Ryan's room, confronted him, done something. But fear wrapped around me like a vice. Because if Ryan could do this, if he had been in my room, standing inches away from me while I slept, what else was he capable of? I locked the bedroom door. For the first time since moving in, I actually locked it. Then I shoved a chair under the handle for good measure. I barely slept. Every creak in the house sent my pulse racing. I imagined shadows in the hallway, the sound of breathing just outside the door. Morning couldn't come fast enough. When it did, I decided, this ends today. But before I could tell Eric, Ryan made the first move. He was already at the kitchen table when I came downstairs, sipping orange juice like nothing had happened. He looked up, met my gaze, and smiled. "Sleep well?" The words hit me like a punch. He knew. He saw my fear. And he liked it. That was when I understood, this wasn't about love or infatuation. This was about control. About seeing how far he could push, how much power he could hold over me. I wasn't playing along anymore. "Ryan," I said, keeping my voice steady, "we need to talk." His smile widened. "I was hoping you'd say that." I swallowed hard, keeping my expression neutral. I wouldn't give him the reaction he wanted. Eric sat at the table, oblivious. He scrolled through his phone, sipping his coffee like it was just another morning. Ryan knew that. That's why he was smiling. I took the seat across from him, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "Ryan, we need to set some boundaries." His eyes darkened, but the smirk stayed. "Boundaries?" Eric glanced up. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. I could say it. Right here, right now. Tell Eric that his son was creeping into our room at night, snapping photos of me in my sleep. But Ryan was watching me too closely. Waiting. Daring me. "Yeah," I said finally. "I just wanted to talk to Ryan about some house stuff." Eric shrugged and went back to his phone. Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I'm all ears." I kept my voice firm but calm. "I don't want any more late-night texts," I said. "No more comments about me and Eric. No more weirdness." His eyes flickered with amusement. "Weirdness?" I gritted my teeth. "I mean it, Ryan. It stops now." Silence stretched between us. Then he leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the table. "You're acting like I've done something wrong." My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, to throw his phone at him, to show Eric the proof. But something about the way he sat there, so calm, so in control, made my skin crawl. Ryan wasn't just a creep. He was something worse. And I had a terrible feeling I wasn't going to like what happened next. He tilted his head. "I get it. You feel guilty." My breath hitched. "What?" "For liking the attention." His voice was soft, almost soothing. "For liking the way I look at you." A chill ran down my spine. That was when I knew he wouldn't stop. Not unless I made him. I barely made it through the day. Ryan acted like nothing had changed. He joked with Eric, played video games, lounged on the couch like he hadn't invaded my space. Like he didn't own a piece of my fear. I avoided him as much as I could, but I felt his eyes on me. Watching. Waiting. That night, I made a decision. I locked the bedroom door again. But this time, I wasn't just hiding. I was waiting. Sometime after midnight, I heard it. The doorknob jiggled. I sat up in bed, pulse hammering. Then, a soft click. My breath caught in my throat. He had a key. The door creaked open an inch, then two. I gripped the heavy lamp from my nightstand, heart pounding so hard it hurt. Ryan was in the doorway, watching me. Then he stepped inside and shut the door behind him. I sat still, my heart pounding in my chest as Ryan stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving mine. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do, but it was too late for thinking. This was it. The moment I had been dreading, and yet, this was also the moment I had been waiting for. Ryan closed the door behind him with a soft click. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. He leaned against the door, arms crossed, his smirk still in place. "You didn't have to lock the door," he said, voice smooth and casual. "I'm not going to hurt you." I didn't believe him. Not for a second. "I'm done, Ryan," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "You need to leave. Right now." He tilted his head, as if confused by my words. "Leave? I'm just here to talk." I shook my head, my grip tightening around the lamp. "No. This isn't just talking anymore. You've crossed a line. And it stops tonight." Ryan's smile faltered for just a moment, but then it was back, colder than before. He took a step forward, his movements slow and deliberate. "You're overreacting. You don't know what you want. You're just confused." I stood up, putting the lamp down on the bed, and took a step toward him. I wasn't going to back down. Not anymore. "I know exactly what I want," I said firmly. "I want you gone. I want you out of my life, and I want you to leave Eric out of this. Do you hear me?" His eyes flickered with something darker, a shift in his expression, but he didn't stop moving. "You think you can just control me? You think you can push me away like that? You think I'll just walk away?" I took another step forward, standing my ground. "I don't care what you think. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You've been creeping around in the shadows for too long, and I'm done with it." Ryan's face twisted in frustration, and his eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this," he muttered, his voice low. "Maybe. But it's happening anyway," I replied. "You can either leave on your own, or I'll make you leave." His gaze flickered toward the door, then back to me. He seemed to hesitate, just for a moment, before he let out a low laugh. "You're nothing without me," he said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "You need me more than you want to admit." I shook my head. "Not anymore." And with that, I walked to the door, grabbing the doorknob before turning back to face him. "Get out, Ryan." For a split second, I thought he might push me. Might try to fight back, to make me feel small and helpless again. But instead, he stood there, seething, a look of frustration on his face. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked toward the door, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. He hesitated for just a moment before he reached for the handle, looking back at me one last time. "You'll regret this," he muttered again, his voice filled with venom. I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. And then, without another word, he left. The door clicked shut behind him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was alone. The fear, the tension, it melted away, leaving a shaky relief in its place. I leaned against the door for a moment, breathing heavily. My hands were shaking, my heart still racing, but I felt something inside me shift. I had stood my ground. I had confronted him, and I had made it clear that I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. And somehow, I knew it was over. Ryan was gone. And I was free.